So Dennis has been saying a few things, and I'm sure you have been listening to him. Clearly, Donald Trump was not voted out because of COVID, so that's not factual. But what are the parallels that you see in the two countries as far as our elections are concerned? Can the two NDC NPP, appropriate or seize the Donald Trump victory and use the parallels that exist in America to forecast December 7th?
Well, thank you very much, Samson. Good morning to your discerning viewers, and good morning to the eminent panelists that you've assembled on your platform. I'm privileged to be part of the discussion. I think this trending issue has been up this past few days that we've seen Donald Trump as the president-elect, the 47th president-elect of the U.S. And there has been a number of analysis and discussions to draw some semblance and similarities between what happens in U.S. politics and elections and that of Ghana. Now, as a matter of fact, I'm a social scientist, and so I like to do with empirical analysis and evidence. And the idea has been that if we are looking at political coincidence, then you can put up a number of years and occurrences where you have seen from Ghana's Fourth Republic that anytime there's a Democrat leadership in U.S., there is a corresponding ideological counterpart in U.S., which is the NDC more or less. And anytime you've seen a Republican Party in the U.S., the ideological counterparts more or less again, which is the NPP, is found in government. It's right from the presidency of Jerry John Rawlings through to John Adjei Kufuor, to Atamels, to President Kufuor, and of course, President John Dramani Mahama. This has always been the terrain until 2020, where we had a Democrat, President Biden in power, but President Kufuor in government. In fact, there are a number of similarities that other people draw. People even looking at how the Speaker of Parliament is coming from the position in the U.S., and the same thing also in Ghana. In fact, people even go as far as ahead to look at the key swing states, what you call the battleground states in U.S., and also a similar development here in Ghana, where you have some key determining regions like the Central region and Greater Accra region, as more or less the battleground regions in Ghana's election. So these are some of the scenarios that you can identify and say there's some semblance or similarity within Ghana's election and U.S. election. But Samson, I think there is some analysis that you can make that you can find some differences in these similarities. And so these coincidences do not necessarily reflect the political landscape of Ghana's elections and governance, for which reason you say that what happens in the U.S. must necessarily happen in Ghana. There's a possibility, and there's also the other way around happening in the continent, in Ghana. For instance, let me give you one thing, Samson. Time is everything, I always say in politics. Time is everything in elections. And if you look at when Kamala Harris came to the scene, it looks as if she was behind this. She was a little bit too late compared to President Donald Trump, who had so many years of solidifying his base and championing and driving across his campaign message. Kamala Harris came in 3 to 4 months to the elections. And I have said elsewhere that U.S. has some kind of trajectory of punishing first-term presidents who decide to put up their vice presidents for presidential nominee. It's happened to President Truman in 1962. It's happened to President Lyndon B. Johnson in 1968. So this is a precedent that we've had. Compared to Ghana's election, both Dramani Mahama, former President Dramani Mahama, and President Bawumia, they have had the glory of time. They have had the chance of time for so many years in Ghana's politics. They have had a chance to demonstrate their goodwill to the people of Ghana, what they are likely to do when they come back as president. And they have been very visible within the parties and governments which they have represented. And so time for one element will be a difference between U.S. elections that happen today and what is happening in Ghana. Again, let's look at the selection procedure. If there is anything that made Kamala Harris unpopular, according to some circle, it was because she was foisted on the Democrat Party as the presidential nominee. And probably, if they had opened the game up and went for delegate convention, then they would have elected somebody who would have owned the campaign and probably be the choice of the people, right?
Does that analysis does that analysis not go for the NDC in the current circumstance, where John Mahama, like Trump, lost election, one term, and has been on the campaign, if you like it, since he lost election? And then Bawumia comes in later after being selected or elected. And Kennedy Japan, Alan Sherman thing, the accusations are that like this guy was just favored from the presidency. If the scales were fair, he would not win. So isn't that like a parallel if you look at it, one representing Kamala Harris and one representing Donald Trump, the advantage of time?
Well, I think that's a fair question that you put across something. But I think it's not naturally a parallel or semblance for either of the parties. Because if you look at NDC, former President John Dramani Mahama is a choice of the people as far as NDC is concerned, right? There is no idea of him being forced, right? Him being imposed, if I were to choose that word, on the people. Right?
Well, there were those accusations against him as well, anyway. But proceed.
Right. And in that same vein, Vice President Bawumia, right, went through that process of being selected. Most of these candidates have enjoyed the visibility, right? They own the campaign, they own their messages, and so they are out there with this visibility. The dynamics and the nuances are different when it comes to the U.S. election. Once again, look at popular policies. If there was anything that you could blame Kamala Harris for, right? And here, I understand we are in a political season in Ghana. So it makes sense to me that both political parties are able to see the moment to give momentum to their campaign. But let's look at the nuances. Kamala Harris was unpopular, right? Also because of some of the unpopular policies and governance styles of his leader, which is President Biden, right? Some of the policy that Kamala Harris was putting forth, for instance, immigration policy, she was supposed to be the borders as they claim, right? But the Democrats had nothing to show for in terms of policies, right? I mean, the Democrats had nothing to show for when it came to how well they had done with immigration policies. You can't mention the same when it comes to former President John Dramani Mahama and Vice President Mahmoud Bawumia. These are people that have fronted very popular policies. At the point I'm making that they have sold themselves very well to the people, right? They are very known within political discussions. You cannot tell me that both Vice President Bawumia and John Dramani, former President John Dramani,
I was pointing to Dennis about the campaign of the NPP, and you hear even President Akufo-Addo refer to John Mahama as a serial loser. It's something he doesn't miss when at the slightest opportunity. And they have been telling the people that, he was voted out. It means he cannot be voted back. This parallel will hurt them because if you are using that, and if that impacts on our elections, if U.S. elections outcome impact on our elections, then Donald Trump has disproved that. The NDC will say, there you have it. John Mahama can be re-elected.
Right. I mean, that is true. That's why I said that we are in an election year. And so it makes absolute sense for the parties here to steal political capital from developments in the U.S. to give a boost to their campaign here. So just like the argument you made, we have seen how the MPP party is also trying to say that because of the ideological correlation between the Republicans and the MPP, once a Republican leader is coming to power, then automatically you have MPP also coming to power in this election year. So regardless of how you look at it this way, regardless of how you look at it, both these powers are going to seize on the moment to give a boost to their campaign. There is something that I want to draw attention on, right? Regardless of these differences. At the end of the day, it will boil down to
the thing against Bawumia again is what I pointed to Dennis, that Donald Trump and his team were very focused and consistent on the question of continuity, and that Kamala represented continuity of the economic problems that they are suffering. How do you think that can be projected onto our elections as well, because our economy has suffered, it has hemorrhaged. Even though the NPP will point to exoteric reasons, exogenous reasons why all of these things have happened. They'll point to COVID, they'll point to Ukraine. I'm not saying you can discount all of these things, the bank collapse issues and all of that. So in those terms, is the economy not at a place you can say could be that of the US, and the reason they may not want to retain the NPP?
Well, thank you, Samson, for this point. I must say that the idea is not to say, in my opinion, that NPP or NDC will win in this election based on projection, but to draw the differences and the similarities. And so on that score, I agree with you when you say that you cannot associate Kamala Harris's intended government from the bad policies of Biden. But then again, and I'll come to the issue of economy. You see, it depends on how the vice presidential candidate is able to project his policies, define the perimeters of his campaign, of which he or she is going to be different from that of the government that they represent. Now, if you look at the US election, one of the failures of Kamala Harris is her inability to articulate how different she would be from her government if she came to power.
Correct.
On a number of incidents, she was asked this question, and to my disappointment, the answer she gave, right, was not something inspiring to convince undecided voters that she was not going to do anything different from her government. It was when she realized this was chipping away her popularity and her support that in the latter stage of the campaign, she decided to toe a line, but it was too late for her. And so I'm saying that, again, let's look at Vice President Mahmoud Bawumia, the presidential candidates for MPP. How well has he been able to define his policies? How well has he been able to project himself, right? Has he defined the parameters of his campaign? Has he sold the campaign messages very well to the extent that we know that even though you're a vice president, you belong to the current government? One thing about vice presidents is that they are also supposed to be ceremonial. You can't have a visible forefront than your president.
Okay.
And so right now that you are ready to take in that mantle, how different would you do things from your government? So there's no way he's going to run away from the governance or the inadequacies within the incumbents. There's no way he can run away from it.
Right.
But he can find a way to define himself very well, so he insulates himself from such blame.
Great. Thank you very much, Prof. Sabafo Mendia.